Hello, everyone. And unfortunately, we haven't done the show in a couple of weeks, and it wasn't intentional. It wasn't like we decided. It wasn't like we were trying not to do. It's just that scheduling conflicts have gotten in the way. I remember one Tuesday after the UFC 281 pay per view. I remember Dan had to do a Nick game that Tuesday night on because the Knicks were playing Utah and started at 9 o'clock, so we couldn't do the show we typically do on Tuesdays. Normally, we do on Tuesday nights because that's when me and Dan are both available to do the show because me and Dan don't have the same schedule in terms of work and stuff like that. Don't want to reveal too much of the inside baseball, but that's why we tend to do the show around Tuesdays at 9 o'clock because we're both available. And last week was obviously Thanksgiving week, and I work at retail, and the store I work at, we get very busy on Thanksgiving week. Extremely busy. And this past week was freaking busy as fuck. My goodness. That Monday to Wednesday, and I had to work and phew, so we couldn't do a show like we wanted to, unfortunately, etc. So I do apologize there. It was more so due to scheduling conflicts, not because we got lazy or anything. It was because of scheduling conflicts we couldn't do the show. So I want to clarify that there in the beginning before we talk about what the video is about, which is the light heavyweight title picture and Yuri's injury, etc. And like I said, I just want to clear the air first before we go into the subject. And I kind of want to start doing more videos like this to where if big news happens like this type of news, for example, I can do a quick video just talking about it briefly, so that way the MMA fans on this channel can have content they can watch and etc. Because obviously because obviously it's important to talk about these things, especially as a channel that does cover MMA. And like I said, I do apologize in the scheduling conflicts, and I'm gonna try, like I said, try to do more of these. And thank you guys for the love and support you guys give to the show, the channel. Me and Dan do appreciate the love and support to our show and to the channel. So is my dad, obviously. He's not, he's usually not involved in the MMA show, but still he appreciates the love and support you give to the show and the channel, where it be the MMA program, the baseball, Nick program, etc. Appreciate the love and support. Thank you guys so much. And well, let's talk about the main subject, which is Yuri Prohaska's shoulder injury and the fact that the light heavyweight title is vacant, and Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev are going to be fighting for the light heavyweight title in the new main event of UFC 282. Now, it was last week that the news reported that Yuri Prohaska had a shoulder injury and was going to be out at least 6 months. So he decided to vacate the title. He didn't want to hold the light heavyweight division, so he vacated the title. And because of that, the UFC decided to put Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev as the main event for the light heavyweight title at the UFC 282 pay-per-view, which is happening next Saturday. Now, originally, the pay-per-view main event was supposed to be Glover Teixeira and Yuri Prohaska, the rematch of their legendary fight from earlier this year, but like I said, the shoulder injury obviously screwed that up. And before I talk about Glover, I do want to read Yuri Prohaska's quote about the shoulder injury that he wrote on his Instagram. Give me one. Hang on, let me just pull up the Instagram quote real quick. Give me one moment. The following, Yuri Prohaska on Instagram said the following quote: "I'm very disappointed to announce that I will not be defending my belt at UFC 282. I was injured in training in Las Vegas while finishing my preparation for my title defense in the UFC's light heavyweight division. I injured my shoulder and surgery required, which will put me out of action for at least 6 months. Knowing this information, I decided after consulting with UFC management that due to this time constraint, I will not hold that light heavyweight division and will vacate the title. I'll go for UFC belt as soon as that the doctors have given me the green light to fight again. I'm going to fight for the belt, and I'm going to get it no matter who currently holds it. It's always been the most important thing for me to put the best performance and compare myself to the best. Let the best show no matter who they are now. I'll be back in 6 months. I'll take the title from whoever holds it," which I think he meant to write, but didn't put that. And like I said, English is not his first language. He originally wrote in his native language in Czech, and then he rewrote it in English, to be fair to him, because for me it's a little bit hard to read. But like I say, he's not a native English speaker. To be fair to Yuri Prohaska, I want to be fair to him. Anyway, excuse me. I apologize to my fans, friends, family, and who bought tickets and made plans to come to Las Vegas to support me. It means a lot to me. I also want to apologize to Glover Victory, as he wrote to finish that quote. So that's Yuri Prochazka's getting a statement out for the whole him vacating his title, etc. And it sucks because I like Yuri Prochazka. Yuri Prochazka is easily one of the more exciting, if not one of the top 10, maybe top 5 most exciting fighters in all of MMA. And Jiri Prochazka and all of his performances have in the UFC and going back to Rising have all been exciting, fun. He has great spectacular knockouts, finishes. I mean, his first 2 fights in the UFC have been great highlight reel knockouts, where it against Volkan Ozdemir in his UFC debut, and then we did to Dominic Reyes back in May of 2021, and we landed a spin elbow and knocked him out. I mean, that was just phenomenal. And then, of course, the Glover fight, which is fight of the year, in my opinion. I highly doubt a fight's going to top that one, because that fight was so damn spectacular. I mean, it's legendary. It's one of the all-time great UFC fights, period. One of the great MMA fights, period. Maybe the greatest UFC light heavyweight title fight ever. It may give Shogun and Dan Henderson a run for their money for the greatest light heavyweight fight ever in UFC history. That's how good that Glover Yuri fight was. I mean, it's just spectacular, and Yuri's been involved in some great wars. He has a great exciting style. Even when he's not in wars, he finishes guys in exciting fashion, and Yuri's got a great personality too, a weird personality, but weird in a cool, good way, where it intrigues you. And having him gone for a while, it sucks for the UFC. It sucks for us fight fans, and it sucks for Yuri especially, because obviously he didn't want to be injured. So hopefully for Yuri, he can recover properly and able to fight again. Hopefully he can still be the same Yuri Prochazka he was prior to his shoulder injury. Now, it says he's going to be out for at least 6 months. It'll definitely be a lot longer, because once he's clear, he's going to need at least a month or so to start, training properly and get himself, used to training. So that way, once he's used to training, then he can have a training camp. So it'll probably be, like, in my opinion, more like 9 months before we see Yuri fight again. So the earliest we probably see him maybe fight like late August of next year or September. That'll probably be the earliest we see Yuri fight. And obviously Yuri should fight whoever's the champion at that point. And that's the most obvious point. That's the most obvious statement I can make, and the most obvious thing the UFC should do, rather. And excuse me. Now for Glover Teixeira, I mentioned him briefly. Now UFC originally offered Glover Teixeira Magomed Ankalaev, but he wanted more time to prepare, and actually suggested to the UFC that him and Ankalaev can fight in UFC 283 in Brazil, because it'll give Glover more time to prepare for Ankalaev, considering Magomed Ankalaev is a southpaw, and he comes from Dagestan, has that, does use wrestling a lot more, which I understand Glover's position. I think it's fair from Glover's perspective that for Glover to have more time to prepare for someone like Magomed Ankalaev, considering Glover is older, and if he loses this fight, he's probably never getting another chance at a light heavyweight title fight. And for Glover, you don't want to fight in short notice and screw the last opportunity to be a champion again. You want to get as much time to prepare so that you can fight at your potentially best. Get someone like Magomed Ankalaev, who's I believe on an 8-fight win streak, if I'm not mistaken, and it's no easy task for anybody, especially for Glover Teixeira. So I mean, it is fair for Glover to ask for more time. I also understand the UFC's perspective with that, the fact that they have a pay-per-view to fill. They need a main event for this pay-per-view upcoming, considering they already got a pay-per-view for UFC 283, which is David Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno 4 in Brazil. And they can't have a pay-per-view where they have no title fights or a true main event especially the end of the year pay-per-view, which is December 12th. It's the final pay-per-view of the year. They need at least a main event fight. And even though Paddy Pimblett's a rising star, Paddy Pimblett ain't ready yet to be a main event of a pay-per-view, especially against Jared Gordon. No offense to the two of them, but they're not ready. That's not a main event fight for a pay-per-view. Paddy Pimblett has potential to be a pay-per-view star, but he's just not yet at the moment, which has got to be real. And that's the new co-main event now. Jared Gordon and Paddy Pimblett for the UFC 282 co-main event. And Glover did ask for Jan Blachowicz if they really wanted him to fight in December. There's this pay-per-view card. Glover asked that he fight Jan Blachowicz, considering Jan's a much easier style match. It's a much the style Jan brings compared to Jiri is a lot more similar than Ankalaev and Jiri. So it'll be a little bit more easier for Glover to transition to prepare for Jan Blachowicz. And plus, he already fought Blachowicz and beat him too. That's also a big part of it as well. But also the styles is a lot more similar. Obviously, they're not the same, Jiri and Jan, but it's a lot more similar than Ankalaev and Jiri. So Glover asked the UFC for a Jiri and for to fight Jan December 12th, but the UFC declined. And Dana White did mention the fact that Ankalaev's on a long win streak, and he's pretty much the most deserving guy to fight for a title. Especially in this situation, considering the win streak he's on, which is fair from the UFC's perspective. I understand both sides. I understand UFC side and Glover's side. Glover, hey man, I need more time to prepare for someone like Ankalaev, who's a totally different style from Jiri Prochazka. 2 weeks we can have is not enough time to prepare for this guy. We fight January in Brazil, so we have more time to prepare for him. And I understand the UFC side where it's like, well, we want this guy who's younger, who hasn't fought for the titles on a longer win streak to get a title fight, and we need a fight that can main event pay-per-view. And Magomed Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz, or Magomed Ankalaev versus Glover Teixeira, is a pay-per-view main event worthy fight, especially for the light heavyweight title. And the UFC wants to have a true main event fight for that pay-per-view, especially considering, like I mentioned, it's the end of the year pay-per-view. So I understand both sides, really. I get Glover's side, I get UFC side, so I really can't. It's a tough situation, and I truly do believe Glover Teixeira will fight the winner of Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. I really do believe that, personally. And he should, because outside of Glover Teixeira, there's really no one who's next in line for the light heavyweight title in the lightweight division. Ryan Spann and Nikita Krylov are fighting in late February 25th. And then you got Anthony Smith fighting Jamal Hill in March 11th or March 18th. I know it's in March. They're fighting the main event, and none of those guys I mentioned are worthy of a title fight as of this moment. Now, whoever has a better performance maybe could. Even Krylov does beat Spann, maybe not. Probably not. In Jamal Hill, if he beats Anthony Smith or Smith wins, I feel like those guys are going to need at least one more fight, one more victory to get a light heavyweight title fight, in my opinion. Now I think about it. So that's why it's obviously Glover Teixeira should fight for the title next against the winner of Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz. And now let me talk briefly about that fight, considering that is the main event. Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. As I post a picture of the new poster with obviously Jiri being the former champion, next to them, as unfortunately he loses his title due to shoulder injury. Good, smart idea. If you can't get Glover to fight Ankalaev, just put Jan and Magomed as the title fight, considering both guys were fighting for a number one contendership fight anyway. That fight originally is supposed to be the number one contender for the lightweight title next, and might as well just bump it up for the actual championship, which is great for both guys. Magomed Ankalaev doesn't have, but both guys don't have to wait an extra few more months to fight for a championship to become a champion. They can become champion before Christmas, and what a great Christmas gift that would be. Well, that'd be a great Christmas for either one of those guys, whoever becomes champion, to be the lightweight champion, or Magomed Ankalaev for the first time, or Jan Blachowicz getting his championship back. What a way for 2022 to end for him. This is a guy who last year lost the light heavyweight title to Glover Teixeira back in October 2021. Beat Alexander Rakic, although it was due to a weird freak injury happened prior to that. Not prior to that, excuse me, during the fight. And then that's why Jan Blachowicz had to fight Ankalaev to get another shot at the title, despite the fact he did call Jiri Prochazka after he won. But because of the way he beat Vacates, UFC felt like he had to win one more fight to get another crack at the heavyweight title. Now he gets another shot at the heavyweight title and a chance to be a champion again. What a great story that would be for Jan Blachowicz to get his championship back. And also, Jan Blachowicz apparently was one of the last people to find out he's fighting for the title. He told the story to Ariel Helwani that he was, when all this happened, he was on a plane from Warsaw, Poland to Las Vegas. As he was getting to Vegas, he acclimated to the weather and time zone and finished his training camp in Vegas. And from the flight from Warsaw all the way to Vegas, which I can imagine is a long-ass flight, considering how far Poland is to Vegas, considering you're traveling to the western part of the United States, basically. And it was a long flight, and then it was a long. And after he got off the flight, that's when he found out that he was fighting Ankalaev for the lightweight title, and he didn't have cell phone service during the flight, basically, and that's been a cool surprise for him to find that out. So it's kind of a unique, cool story for Jan Blachowicz, and for Ankalaev, a great story too, considering he could be the first light heavyweight champion from Dagestan in the UFC and any major MMA organization. Normally, Dagestanis, they tend to be like 155ers, 145ers, 135ers, 125ers, sometimes 170ers. You rarely see them in the upper weight class. Now, I'm not saying there's none. There is some. Like, you got Hamza. Oh, Hamzat's a tweener between 185 and 170. Guys like that. You have Imanov, who's at 185er, who come off that victory with Joaquin Buckley back in the Paris card. You got him. You got Shamil Abduramanov. I always butcher his last name. Shamil Abduramanov. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right. A heavyweight, who's a contender. You also got there's another Dagestan heavyweight I'm forgetting at the moment. But there's been Dagestani fighters who have been above 170, but none of them have had the impressive win streak that Ankalaev has. And by the way, I just recognized Hamza is not from Dagestan. He's from Chechnya. My apologies, from Chechnya, not Dagestan. Still, not many fighters from that region, that Caucasus Mountain Russian republics, that tend to be fighting above 170 typically. That's basically the gist of what I'm trying to say. And excuse me. And for Ankalaev, he has a chance to be the first guy from that region to become a champion at a higher weight class. And this is going to be this should be a good competitive fight. I mean, I know Ankalaev is the favorite. I think he's a 2-1 favorite or 3. Yeah, I think he's like a 2-1 favorite if I'm mistaken. I forget the exact odds. And I think he was always the favorite going into this fight, and still the favorite. And I do wonder how he's going to handle being his first main event of a pay-per-view, going against Jan Blachowicz, who's main evented pay-per-views before, and because this is his first championship opportunity, this is all new to him. Where Jan's used to fighting for a championship, he fought for a belt, won it, defended the belt successfully against Israel Adesanya, fought obviously again for the belt against Glover Teixeira. He knew he lost that fight, lost his championship there. So Jan's used to fighting for championship fights, while Ankalaev is all new to him. Main event pay-per-view, and fighting for a title. So I do wonder if that's going to play a factor. And I do wonder how's Jan originally this fight's supposed to be 3 rounds as a co-main event. Now it's gonna be 5 rounds. So I do wonder that as well. How's it gonna affect both fighters in terms of their gas tanks and their cardio? Like they were both preparing for 3-round fights. Now they're preparing for 5-round fights, and both guys have had 5-round fights and won them. So they're used to it, but at the same time, they weren't expecting it. Now they got to deal with a 5 rounds now, so they have to be careful in terms of how much energy they exert during the early rounds, considering they got rounds 4 and 5 to deal with as well if they don't put out their opponent within the first 3 rounds. So that's gonna be another factor to watch out for. I mean, I'm excited for this fight. Can't wait. UFC 282 is still a pretty damn good card. Like I said, Paddy Pimblett's fight on that card against Jared Gordon as a co-main event. I mean, that card is pretty solid. It's pretty deep. I mean, you got Darren Till and Dricus Duplessis on that card. And I'm trying to remember who else is on that card. Give me one moment. Let me just check real quick who else was fighting that card. Because I remember looking at it and thinking, still a pretty damn good card. I mean, this end of the pay-per-view, end of the year pay-per-view, the UFC, they always tend to stack them well, typically. I mean, last year's end of the year pay-per-view, that was Oliveira and Poirier. was a pretty good card on paper as well. When I remember. Tai Tuivasa was fighting the prelims of that card, which that says a lot when Ty's fighting the prelims of a pay-per-view card. I'm just checking. Okay, Robbie Lawler and Santiago Ponzinibbio was fighting that card, and also you got Bryce Mitchell and Ilya Topuria, which I forgot about. I mean, damn. I mean that's the pay-per-view card. Jan and Magomed Ankalaev main event, co-main event: Paddy Pimblett, Jared Gordon, Robbie Lawler and Santiago Ponzinibbio. Darren Till and Dricus Duplessis, and the opening fight of the pay-per-view, Bryce Mitchell and Ilya Topuria. I mean, that's a pretty damn good pay-per-view card right there. Excellent fights for different reasons. I mean, who knows? And plus, Robbie Lawler and Santiago Ponzinibbio are two very exciting fighters, and Robbie Lawler, a legend, a former welterweight champion. Who knows? This could be his final fight. I'm not saying it is, but you never know. Robbie Lawler's at that stage to where any fight's his last fight, so you never know. You never know, and you do want to appreciate Robbie Lawler for who he is and what he's done, and you want to give him his flowers now before he retires. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. Also, you got Chris Curtis and Joaquin Buckley is on the prelims of this card. I mean, damn, that's a good fight. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Chris Dawkins is the main event of the prelims. It's a good heavyweight fight right there. Two 15 heavyweights. You also got Emin Shabazian on this card. You also got Raul Rosas Jr. fighting this card, who's the youngest UFC fighter in history, who's just turned 18, already fighting in his first UFC fight outside of the that's not the Dana White Contender Series. Technically, it's the second UFC fight, technically, but it's really his first UFC fight. And this guy is 18, fighting on the prelim of a pay-per-view. That is impressive. I tip my hat to him. Man, I don't know. Some people are hating on him. How can you hate on that? I don't know if anyone can hate on that on a man who's 18 fighting the UFC. Well, come on now, people. Stop. Don't be haters. I mean, anyway, I'll talk more about the pay-per-view obviously next week as the week of the pay-per-view. I'll just give a little preview of what to expect for this UFC 282. It's a good card. Can't wait for it. I'm excited to break it down. Also, I can't wait to break down the Orlando cards that's coming up this Saturday, which I am going to. So is my dad. I think he's... Yeah, my dad's going to. Can't wait for that. I mean, whew. I'll talk more about that in another video, the Orlando card, and break that down. And talk about my experiences at the UFC events, because I've been to two UFC events. I was at the RDA Cowboy Cerrone second fight, which was a lightweight title in Orlando, December 2015. And that was also the night Nate Diaz gave out his infamous Conor McGregor call-out. Conor McGregor telling you I work for a motherfucker. I'm gonna fight your effing ass. All that stuff. I was there. No bullshit. And then I went in South Florida. There was a Jack Hermanson and Jack Ray Souza fought in the main event of that card. I remember I was at that event. And like I said, I'll talk more about that in another video, my experiences there. Anyway, not to get too sidetracked, I was talking about the UFC 282 and all that, and then talking about obviously this Orlando card. Either way, we got a new main event for UFC 282. Jan Blachowicz is Magomed Ankalaev. So I'm excited for it. I was looking forward to it anyway. Now I have more reason to look forward, considering it's now for the light heavyweight title, and I'm excited to see what happens. Who's the champ? Does Dagestan get another champion in a major MMA organization, or does Jan Blachowicz become a two-time light heavyweight champion and get his belt back quicker than expected? This is stuff that makes me excited for his pay-per-view come next Saturday. Can't wait. Also the winner of this fight should fight Glover Teixeira next. Glover should get the next title fight, Glover against the winner, somewhere like maybe May or June, probably. May, June, I think that's appropriate for both guys. I think that's appropriate for the next heavyweight title fight. That way these guys, if there's a war, the guys can get enough time to recover, and then they get enough time to recover and prepare for Glover Teixeira. Whether it be a rematch with Glover and Jan, or Magomed Ankalaev and you Glover Teixeira, and Glover can actually have time to prepare for Magomed Ankalaev. Either way, I can't wait. Anyway, thank you guys for watching and listening to this to this video. Where you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, or listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker FM, Anchor FM, Spreaker, etc. We appreciate the love, support you guys give us. thank you. Like I said, apologies for the lack of MMA content in the last couple of weeks. That was not intentional. That just scheduling conflicts got in the way. But hey, we're gonna try to do more videos. And like I said, me and Dan should we'll probably break that. We'll break down this Orlando cards. As I, for some reason I couldn't talk there. But hey, it is what it is. I don't know why I do that, but whatever. We'll keep it rolling. And can't wait to talk about this Orlando card coming up. It's a definitely good card, very solid card, and can't wait to talk about next week, the UFC 282 pay-per-view. A very good pay-per-view card. Can't wait for it. And like I said, thank you guys for the love support. We all appreciate the love support you give the channel. Me, Jeff, Dan, my dad, Gideon, everyone's on the channel. We'll be doing Knicks stuff, Yankee Rock coverage, Ranger coverage, or MMA coverage, etc., or the NFL. We all appreciate the love support you guys give us, because without you guys, this channel ain't anything without you. It's all about you guys are the reason this channel is the way it is. We thank you all. We appreciate y'all. And until next time, we'll have a good night, have a good day, good night every time watching this, and see you next time. Peace.